I created this brief video to show you what one do-it-yourselfer came up with in the process of doing some major patching of walls and slab floor in our basement. I'm going to focus mainly on the floor, but in the passing I'll show you that a lot of stuff had to be done to the walls too. And this is my biggest exhibit, poster child for a majorly screwed up wall where there had been cracks not only in mortar joints but in cinder blocks. And I did a very careful stepwise process of evacuating the mess from certain slots and filling them and then going on to the next set of slots for fear that this whole beam might come crumbling down, and that led to the use of this post as well, which is going to stay there. Now, the immediate thing that prompted this do-it-yourself job, which was long overdue, is that our extended family is sheltering in place with us during the pandemic, and suddenly our big house started feeling not so big anymore, particularly with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So we want to make this into a finished space, which is a major upgrade because this thing had been cracked and crumbling and getting wet all at the same time. And of course we didn't want this in the finished job. So the first thing to say about any job like this that involves leakage of water is the first thing to do is handle your drainage problems first and your foundation. And this one I did get professional help on, including with pads like this that shows where a hole was dug and mud jack planted. The foundation was elevated and then concrete poured up, and that's some around the darker gray around the sides is where I feathered it out because it was kind of humpy and rocky with some patching cement. Okay, so once you've got those things handled, the next obvious place is the junction between the floor and the wall, because that's where so many leakages come from, particularly as your concrete slab starts to settle, particularly if you've had some drainage problems and some cracks develop in the main mass of substances of masonry. So this is where you use hydraulic cement, a product which you mix together and work with real quickly because it takes 3 to 5 minutes for it to set, in which case if you have more to do you have to come up with another batch. I tend to mix mine in the plastic pan of a paint roller tray, and that works for me. And so you can see that all around I've been doing lots and lots of patching. Now, it occurred to me that this would be a wonderful day to do this video because by happenstance I happen to have the floor cracks in various states of repair, and so you can at least see the approach that I took. So I'll show you these different stages, and hopefully later on I'll tack on some in-progress things so you can see some little tips I learned along the way. But we have had some major cracks and some minor cracks, and this is mostly what's left of my major cracks, something that looks like that. And you know, it's a 1/4 inch or more, and this was one of the milder areas. The worst areas were out there in the center of the floor. But this is an example of the major crack that I've been dealing with, and then I would consider this one over here more of a minor crack. Here's another example of a minor crack. Okay, so what have I been doing with these? And of course, none of these is original with me. I did my homework just like you are and watched a lot of YouTube videos and sort of consolidated the ones that made sense to me. And so with the major cracks, I excavated on either side of the major cracks with an angle grinder to create sharp boundaries. And then with cold chisel and hand sledge, such as these, I chipped them out. And I don't have an example of those to show you just now, but the first thing I did thereafter is to fill them almost all the way, but not all of the way, with just regular concrete. Now you do need to use a bonding agent to bond the new concrete to the old concrete. And I'll show you what I used shortly. But I've left a little bit of height discrepancy, about a ½ inch, between the relatively unfinished top of the concrete and the surface I want to eventually climb up to smoothly. And what I'm going to be using to bring that up to the top is 2 1/4-inch layers of vinyl concrete patching material. So let me stand up and move along here. So here is the final product, right next to a trench that hasn't been finalized with patching concrete. Ignore that thing off to the left for now, I'll come back to it. And so with 2 1/4-inch layers, you can nicely feather it out and come up with something that's relatively level and easy to work with. Okay, I promised to show you the concrete approach. So here is just regular concrete, but then here is also some acrylic bonding agent, comes in liquid form. And there's 2 things that I did. Either can be done, and I typically overdo things, so I did both. But when I'm ready to pour the concrete, and I've already pre-moistened the inner surfaces, then I use a brush to slap on some of this acrylic bonding agent to the walls, so I know it gets there. And then I mix up the concrete. Instead of using water, I use this liquid concrete bonding adhesive. So it will bond to the concrete every step of the way. Now, here is the product that I used for the concrete patch, and it's a vinyl concrete patch. This is a dry form. You mix it up, and if you get the right consistency, it works like a dream. If you don't get the right consistency, not so much. But this is what this was made of. And you don't need a bonding agent with this because it's already, in a sense, mixed in. So you need one with the regular concrete, but not with the concrete patch. But you can only build it up in 1/4-inch layers because there's no rocks in it, and it works out best that way. All right, so that's what I'm doing with the major cracks, which, as you saw, pretty much go from corner to corner with various tributaries along the way. And so what about those more minor cracks? So here's one of those. And so the first thing I do is with these is I don't use the angle grinder, I just chip them out. And I'll show you me doing that later, so you get a sense of any technique that might be involved. But I chip it out, but then before I quit for the day, for sure, I fill it up with self-leveling polyurethane. And Make sure it's self-leveling. It's meant for use with horizontal surfaces. I don't think the brand is really crucial. There's several brands, but make sure it's polyurethane and make sure it's liquid self-leveling. Because that really works nice. You fill it in, and when it comes out of the caulking gun, you know, it looks rippled like any effluent from a caulking gun. But very quickly, it sort of ponds out and makes a surface that looks like that. Okay? And it fills in the crack that you've exposed. I think you can start seeing a crack within this unponded stuff. Those dark slits are demonstrations of the crack that we want to fill. Okay? So, this is a pretty major job. Not for everybody, perhaps, but although I've had a desk job all my life, I've been a do-it-yourselfer all my life, weekend warrior, and so I enjoy learning new techniques. And this is an endurance run here. This is a marathon, not a sprint, but it's doable if you have the time and the interest and a few simple tools. The fanciest being an angle grinder, which was new to me for this project, and I also got a little mini jackhammer, which I didn't use that much. Now, one other thing before I close the segment is that this is one of the parts of the major crack that I opened first. And you see what happened. I mean, I knew that this was the wettest part of my basement. And it filled with water, and we have a clay substrate. And so it starts to look clayey, not just sandy. And I decided to put this off to last because it was my worst area, not my best area, and I wanted to gather some skills. But something interesting happened along the way is that when I started sealing all the other things, which might have been tributaries, it's starting to dry out. Can you see those non-brown areas there? So I think I'm drying it out because it's not being fed so much anymore. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about in this segment, so hopefully I'll come back to you with some specific pointers. Okay, so I'm going to show you the chiseling out the minor crack step. Never hurts to sharpen your chisel a little bit, cold chisel. If you have a fancy grinder, that's terrific. If you don't, even a file will improve your outcome, make you more efficient. So the tools are a cold chisel. This one's 1 inch. I would have preferred 3/4, but this is what was available. And a 5-pound hand sledge. And you just follow the crack line. At the outset, I just go vertically, get started, and then I start angling down. Again. And then I'll come back the other way. Get it back into where the crack was. Get a couple grounding smacks, and then start going the other way. Okay, now this one actually has 2 little parallel lines, so I'm going to cover both of them. So I'm going to do this one. So I mostly follow the line even though it's curved. With a nice base, and then I start smacking it at progressively different angles. And then do the same thing for the other crack line. I have 2 crack lines there. Start at the vertical, and then bring it down like this. So this is not high tech, but there's a couple pointers to show you. This is the same trough we were working with in the previous scene, and I've got it all chipped out, and now I'm going to be putting this product in it. This is Sika Pro Select Sealant Leveling Sealant, which is all polyurethane. I don't think that the brand is important. There's more than one company that makes this, but this is what I'm using. Seems to work fine. Now, this is what I did yesterday, and it was very liquidy then, but now it's pretty hard. If you push real hard, you still get a little sponginess, but it cures over the span of 3 to 5 days under reasonably warm conditions, and it'll be rock hard then. But I'm going to be putting this part in, but before I do that, I want to show you what I had to do first. Way over here back to my right, when I chipped all the way to the wall there, or almost all the way, within a few minutes I already started to get some back seepage. You know, it's starting to come in, you see the encroaching dark brown, and so I went ahead and nabbed that with a damming type operation. So they'll nip that in the bud, because I'd rather work at a nice dry surface, of course, because it's going to adhere better. Okay, this stuff's pretty cool. Let me show you kind of how it works. So it's just a standard caulking gun, and I'm going to obviously want to try to follow the line of where the crack is. In some places we have to imagine where it is, but it's not, you don't have to use your imagination majorly here. So I'm just going to start squeezing it out. And first part, of course, is a little cruddy. But as we get going, you see it comes out like any caulk does, but very quickly you're going to see how it puddles out and becomes more like a pond or a lake. And gives you that very smooth coverage. You don't have to fill in the whole excavated concrete, just the bottom of the trough, so that we seal the part that needs to be sealed. And ultimately I'm going to be putting some vinyl patching concrete over that, so I don't want it to be mounded up above the previous grade line. And this looks ugly, so I'm going to get rid of it. Nobody's going to see it, but I don't like it anyway. Let's put it over here for now. All right, so that's all there is to it. See how it puddles out? I'm just going to continue that operation all the way back. And that's all there is to this part. Okay, well, our big project today is to cut channels adjacent to the large crack we have remaining in the concrete floor, and we will go through that in detail. But first I want to do a couple items, an update and a correction. First of all, the correction. You might remember that we talked about the curing process for this polyurethane self-leveling sealer product. And I said that after full curing that the product would be rock hard. Well, it's not. It's got a little bit of sponginess even in the final state. And you're looking at the parts that we did 3 days ago and 4 days ago. I have some other ones that are older than that, and there are none of them that are rock hard. So that's a correction. It's a little bit squishy, a little bit spongy, but that's okay. Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up as a comparison, it was about a week ago that I showed you this wet area that I had chipped out. This is the original part of the crack, and this is the part that I chipped out, and it got wet. We talked about that. We put this off till the last. But a week after that first one that I showed you, you're seeing perhaps that more areas have dried out. Instead of being dark brown and moist looking, they're dry and tan or gray. So that's probably a good sign. It indicates that some of the sources of the moisture have been shut off by filling in other places, and I take that as a good sign. We'll see what develops. Now today the big project is to use the angle grinder to cut channels. And I've used a Sharpie to mark out about where I'd like to go with the angle grinder. Doesn't have to be perfect, but that gives me a little bit of a reference point as I go. And I'm going to talk about a couple safety things, and then we'll head into the demo. So this is a consumer grade angle grinder. It costs $29 at the local Lowe's store. And that's a pretty good deal, $29. The bad news is that that wheel you're looking at, that cutting blade, costs almost as much, $27, $28, something like that. And you really need to have a high quality diamond tipped cutting blade to cut the channels in the concrete. And one option is to go ahead and get the version that has a collection bag and captures your dust for you. I really recommend that unless that you are doing it all outside or in a very limited amount of interior. Don't make my mistake of doing a major job with this thing that kicks up an incredible amount of dust. Just incredible. Now there are also safety issues. This blade spins extremely quickly, goes very fast, and being diamond edged, you can imagine it has some terrific cutting power. So you do not want to cut off a finger or limb or other body part, and you need to be very protective, very careful when you use this. I think it's something that consumers can do, but please, please, please be very careful. So here's that major crack that we were looking at, and it has now had the angle iron run on both sides of the crack, and then I excavated the space in between fairly deeply, as a matter of fact, with the help of a cold chisel and hand sledge. But I have to tell you, I got tired. So I cheated and used my mini jackhammer to finish the job. And there it is. So true confessions, that's what I did. And it didn't go that badly in general. I don't want to use the sledgehammer over much, the jackhammer over much, because there's less control. But I did have decent control having run the angle grinder on both sides of it and creating margins to work within. That said, I dug too deep in most places, and some of that brown you're looking at is the other side of the 4-inch slab and what lies beneath, and that's moist clay. And in general, you don't want to go that deep. It's not necessary for this, I don't think. And the special hazard is that you risk running through the vapor barrier, and I did that. So when I get to the concreting stage, which is later today, I am going to put some plastic here and there to try and sort of recreate the vapor barrier in spots before I put the concrete over it. So that's where we are right now. Okay, so I've mixed up some concrete. I slapped the acrylic bonding agent on the inside of this. And now I'm just sort of gently weighting down that plastic layer that I had to put in before I fill up the rest. So there's nothing too magical about that, but I wanted you to have some images to work with. Got the plastic running pretty much from one end to the other. And remember that I mixed this concrete together with some of the acrylic bonding agent. So I got both the acrylic bonding agent on the inner surfaces of this trough, as well as mixed in with the concrete itself. So hope it'll grab hold of whatever it can grab hold of, and we'll have a good outcome, I hope. So I'm going to be filling this up to, like how we did with the other ones, about a 1/2 inch from the top. So I'll play around with it. But I'm going to fill this out, get it up to within a 1/2 inch of the top, and then let it set. And that's all there is to that part. Okay. So here's something else I wanted to show you. Even though this trench we just cut and then mostly filled is actually fairly decently level, as you can see from the bubble, that's not true on all of my major cracks. So just a few feet away, make that about 2 feet. Look at this guy. It's definitely not level, and if you can't even see the bubble, let me see that. Okay, and that's not unique. Let me show you a certain distance away where I've already used the vinyl patching compound on it. Let's go find a good spot there. How about right there? And you can see that that's not level either, but a little bit further down, it's even worse. So why do I show you this? Well, the larger cracks, not only do they go wider, deeper into your slab, but in many cases they didn't start off aligned with each other. They weren't level with each other. One side jutted up compared to the other right at the major crack, and literally you could catch a toe on it. And so here at least I smooth out the difference between the two sides with a more gradual ramp or transition, so that when this floor is put into use again, maybe your foot will be able to tell that there's a change, but probably not. It'll be a smoother transition. So I just wanted to show you that another reason to excavate the major cracks wider, not necessarily deeper, but wider, is that so you can create that smoother ramp that creates a more gradual transition for the foot and for your safety and for your sense of well-being. True, not every slab of fragmented concrete's level with each other. That would be a major job. I'm just content with smooth transitions here. So that's one of the big points that I wanted to make. All right, so this is going to be our last video segment. I want to show you something that's akin to finishing here. So I haven't really shown you putting the vinyl concrete patcher compound on. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it both on the place that was once a wide crack and also the place that was once a more minor crack. And it's really the same concept, but different amounts, different thicknesses. So before we start doing that, I want to point out that this concrete patching compound, you might think that if it's concrete patching, it must be made out of concrete itself. but it's not. It's cement. There's no rocks in it. It's for patching concrete, but it's not itself concrete. In fact, it's pretty thin, fine stuff here, okay? And you'll see that that translates into a pretty fine consistency of mud. I've mixed up a little mud, and you should only mix up small amounts because you need to be able to use it up within 30 minutes because it does take, you can only work for about that long. So this is what it looks like, all right? Now I've pre-wet the areas I'm going to work in so that they're moist, but no standing water, just like any concrete or cement job. So we do that. We don't have to put a binding agent on it, but we do have to moisten it. And so here we go. I'm going to start with the wider crack area. All right. Remember, this is going to take 2 coats that are going to be about 1/4 inch each. So we'll fill it almost all the way to the top, but not quite. And then when we do the next coat, it's going to be not only over the top, but feathered out over the surface that it's joining with. So it doesn't take much, and you can see how smooth. When you got the right consistency, as I said before, it works like a dream. If it's a little bit too dry, it's kind of a pain, all right? So I'm going to come back to that shortly. I think I'm going to be able to do this with just 1 coat because it's not very deep. So we'll see. I haven't done one of these before, so I'm not expecting big surprises, but I could be surprised because I've never done this. So this is the minor crack that got chipped out by hand. Put in the self-leveling sealant, and now we're filling it in, and we're going to split it out. And I think this is going to go real well. Look at this already. We've got the right idea going here. So I've got a couple different trowels to work with. Sometimes it's nice to switch and see what the next trowel does that the other one didn't. But a little bit's going to go a long way on this one, for sure. All right? So I'm feeling good about this one already. So smush it down in, level it out. It already comes to a very smooth finish because, as I say, it's very fine-grained powder and there's no rocks in it. So, in fact, let me see what happens if I smooth it out with a more standard concrete trowel. And go like this. You know, and that's looking good already. A little bit more right there. And then come back with the concrete cut trowel. And do like that. So, you know, over the next 20 minutes, I'll play with this and smooth it out and so on. Now let's see what we've got over here. You know, so I've got some in here, and I can come more than one way. I've got this little 2 inch by 5 inch trowel that's nice for these little small areas and to get it to a certain height and not more. So I've got a little bit more fine control over it here. All right, so I think you probably got the idea already. It's not rocket science. It's just stuff that you've already done before, I'm sure. Now, one other thing I want to point out before I let you go, and that is a product that I didn't show you being used, but will be part of this project, and that's called Dry Lock brand floor and wall masonry waterproofer. So as it says, this is the one that you can use on both floor and wall. All the other Dry Lock products are for floor only, but this is floor and wall, and then I'm going to do that for sure, both places, but especially the floor. Once I've got the whole concrete floor patched, washed, dried, then is going to get dry lock. It gets one coat. If you use a brush or a roller, it goes in one direction. You get all those pinholes filled, and then 2+ hours later, when it's reasonably dry, you go in the opposite direction, get all those pinholes filled, you know, jab, 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 jab with the coat, and then you can go with paint over that, and that's going to be our final coat, except for rugs that we'll put over things. So we're going to go with a pretty simplistic floor, but it'll look a little better than it does now, but this is what it took to get it up smooth and patched and hopefully dry. Okay, well, I hope you found this helpful. Maybe there's some tips in there you can use. Maybe you can learn from what I screwed up, especially, like don't dig those trenches too deep. And right after you lose my face, I've got a posting of the materials we used in this project. So you can have that to look at. If you like any of the products, they'll be all written out and you'll be good to go. So thanks for watching. I appreciate your attention. Maybe someday I'll make another one. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.